So the clickbaity headline I could easily use is Nissan is canceling half of its EV offerings. But the truth is, they only had two, the Nissan Ariya and the Nissan Leaf. And apparently the Ariya was not selling too well, so they just decided to scrap it. So they're not going to continue it, which was kind of a surprise to me, at least anecdotally, because I see Nissan Ariyas all over the place. I mean, not just in the Bay Area, but whenever I go on road trips, it's a very common EV that definitely has more of a luxurious emphasis than the Leaf does, and a lot of people were kind of hoping that Nissan was going to be able to break into more demographics in regards to EVs. Of course, what they've really been known for is this car parked right outside mine, the Nissan Leaf, and that has been around. It's actually older than the Model S, so it's basically one of the oldest continuous running EV products over the past more than a decade now, and that was supposed to be kind of the everyman's EV from the beginning. You know, it was far cheaper than the Model S, which came out a little bit after the original Leaf. It was just, you know, far cheaper, but the big compromise was, of course, not as high a range, not as great charging characteristics, and the battery health was not as good with the Leaf compared to what Tesla came up with in the Model S. And since then, the Nissan Leaf has not really grown past being kind of the basic, more affordable, but still very much city-focused vehicle. Still, to this day, the 2025 Nissan Leaf offerings are around 150 to 200 miles of range. Much better than the original Leafs got, but definitely not as great as the new and exciting upcoming 2026 Nissan Leaf. I guess they're putting all of their electric eggs in that basket by revitalizing it with better aerodynamics and better range, now looking like they can get close to 300 miles of estimated range with the updated Leaf that comes with a lot of new design language. Some people say it's more of a crossover now than a compact, but it's still pretty short, and as a fan of smaller vehicles, I haven't had a chance to check out the 2026 Nissan Leaf yet, but I actually really like it. I'm glad that there are still vehicles out there coming from the legacy automakers that are pretty short, clocking in just over 170 inches, which is not bad, and for the range it's getting, I'm actually pretty impressed. They also did something a little bit interesting. They have two charge ports on the vehicle. Kind of makes it somewhat unique, but thankfully they have a native NACS port on the passenger side front, which means it will be optimized for V3 superchargers when you go on road trips. But bizarrely enough, I had to read into this quite a bit. I still don't think it makes a ton of sense, but apparently the NACS port only does DC charging. You cannot home charge with that NACS port with AC, so that means you can't use like a destination charger at a hotel that's NACS. No, that's what the driver's side front charge port is for. That's still going to be J1772, not CCS, so you can't fast charge from either side, but it means, I guess, at home when you probably are plugging in with the exact same charger every day, that one is still going to be J17 instead of NACS, and that's a little weird, a little interesting, but overall, I guess it kind of makes sense because most people who are probably buying a Nissan Leaf are the type of person who probably isn't coming from a Tesla. Maybe they are coming from an older Nissan Leaf or a Chevy Bolt or something like that. I just feel like that's more of their target demographic. Or maybe you're just using the included charger that the car came with. That one is far more likely to be the J1772 connector, and when you go home every day to plug in, or maybe you charge at work like I do, you're gonna just keep using the same mobile connector that you already got. So might as well be the J17 one because that's pretty commonplace for a lot of customers. But then when you go on a road trip, it's basically saying by default we want you to use the supercharger network, which I think makes sense because it's the most plentiful network. It has the cheapest electricity. It has the most amount of stalls to pull from. So yeah, it just makes a lot of sense for road trip ability. And yes, this new Nissan Leaf does have much faster charging than the previous generation ones, which basically just had a lot of passive cooling so that it wasn't really meant to be road tripped with, and it would just max out around 40-50 kilowatts. The new one can get well over 100 kilowatts, so it's definitely not going to be some kind of road trip monster, but it will actually be livable because you're getting well over 200 miles of range, and you've got a V3 supercharger optimized charge port, so that's great. But I guess the Ariya was just not selling well enough to continue making it, and sadly I think our current administration likely played a role in that because they were not manufacturing the Nissan Ariya in the United States, which just meant with the tariffs and everything, it was not cost competitive. So my theory is the vast majority majority of Nissan Arias I was seeing on the road, those I guess were probably all leased because they couldn't sell enough of them. They were filling up dealership lots, so their logic was, well, we can't just keep storing these at our dealerships. Let's just go ahead and lease them out for really, really cheap. And pretty much every review I've seen on YouTube of people who have taken delivery of Nissan Arias, vast majority of the time, they're leasing them for super duper cheap, just a couple $100 a month, which for the luxuriousness of the vehicle, that's not bad at all. That's actually pretty reasonable. There's a lot of very competitive electric leases right now. So I don't blame people, but they were likely not too profitable for the company themselves, which is why I get a lot of YouTubers these days. They're like, oh, look at these great lease offerings. Just lease EVs because then you can upgrade them in a couple of years. No big deal. And while in the short term, that's probably very nice for the consumer, but it is not too sustainable. I think when you see great lease offerings like that, it's a sign that the vehicle that you're leasing is probably not going to be manufactured much longer, because when it's only a couple $100 a month to lease, that's not very profitable for the company. And when they get it back, they're going to have a used vehicle that they're going to try to resell, but probably not going to get a great deal on, because who's going to want to pay that much for a vehicle that someone else has been driving around for the past few years? So I basically think it's kind of like a death sentence when you see super low lease pricing like that, because it's far more profitable for the company to actually sell the vehicle, even if it's financed, because they get much more money that way than they do if they just lease it out, because eventually that's going to be a liability that comes back to haunt them later. And Nissan may have canceled the Ariya before, you know, maybe a F-150 Lightning gets officially scrapped, or maybe an ID4 officially gets discontinued, but Nissan is in a very, very tricky financial situation. They keep losing money quarter after quarter, and I don't think they're necessarily nearing bankruptcy. They still appear to have quite a bit of cash in the bank, but they're going through some major restructuring right now to try to get the company back towards profitability, because right now they're just losing way too much money on all of their vehicles, and EVs are already very, very difficult to make profitably and successfully. So I understand why they're being quite cautious with the future of it. But I do think this means a lot of the future of electric vehicles is going to be lower range, more cost-effective vehicles like the Nissan Leaf and less like the Nissan Ariya. I get the margin chasing and that kind of thing, but it seems like this is where a lot of the market is headed, and I'm curious what you guys think of the updated Nissan Leaf. Do you think it can keep Nissan relevant in the electric vehicle market? And are you going to miss the Ariya? I honestly kind of liked the design of it. I'm sad I never got a chance to test drive one. I guess there's still time, but I'm pretty busy these days, so don't look for an Ariya test drive for me anytime soon. But yeah, for the money, it was just kind of difficult to justify, I think, for a lot of people. So sad to see it go, but hopefully the updated Nissan Leaf can carry the torch and keep moving more and more people towards electric. Feel free to let me know how you guys feel down in the comments below, and thank you to everybody supporting this channel directly. Seriously, helps us out a ton, as does just watching these videos. So thanks again. Have an excellent rest of your day.